Hello and welcome back with me, Admiral, joining me back on the Star Trek Fleet Command once again. So in today's episode, we're going to be discussing, it's more for the new players in the game that have joined us probably in the recent sort of, I'd say 5 to 6, 5, 6 months, potentially even, and maybe potentially up to a year. It's probably going to be more inclined towards you. However, if you are obviously a long-term player, as I am, please do leave your thoughts down below, and obviously whether you agree with me or whether you disagree, and leave how you've done what we're going to discuss in the comments down below. As always, if you do like this content, do consider subscribing to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and let's crack on. So today's video is going to be all about the factions, and in particular, should you do a single, a double, or a triple faction grind to get to your first lockout, which is at 10 million for each faction. At that lockout, you will then no longer be targeted by obviously the enemy when you enter the systems. You will don't have to worry about potentially losing reputation or even going down into the lower tiers once again, because once you get to this celebrated point, not celebrated, but whatever point this is, respected, sorry, once you get to that respected point, you don't really need to worry about it anymore, other than the faction that you're obviously then trying to grind up to the higher levels. So we're going to discuss, in my opinion only, what the benefits are of all three and the downsides are for all three. And then I'll go to give you an overview at the very end to what I think you should do up to a certain point, and then you should switch over to whatever I sort of think you should do. So we're going to start with the single faction grind. The single faction grind is probably single-handedly the easiest thing to do. Out of all three of them, it is the easiest one to do, as you only need to focus on one faction at a time. And it's pretty obvious, because all you need to do is, if you go to your dailies, when you hit your daily goals, depending on what faction you're going for, obviously they will appear in here. All you need to focus on then is to hitting one certain faction that they obviously don't like. If it was going to be Romulans who we're going for, all you would need to do is go and hit the Federation. Go hit Federation for whatever level you need to hit them at, and you would just obviously complete that mission, and you're done for the day. You need to hit 25 of whatever the higher level is. By hitting that higher level, you will automatically complete the lower one as well. So always focus on hitting whatever the 25 one says to do. Other than that, that is as easy as it gets. And not only that as well, all you need to do as well is you only need to mine one type of ore a day as well, or one type of material, should I say, a day. So that is either going to be obviously ore, gas, or crystal. You only need to mine one of them a day. And you need to get, depending on what level you are as well, you need to get obviously a certain amount, obviously, of that as well. 3-star most likely. As you can see, my ore's gone over to 4-star due to my reputation. But yeah, that is pretty much all you need to do every single day. Is just hit whichever factions. If you do have obviously a Vidar, then all you need to do there is go to the Borg tech tree. Make sure you let tier 9 your Vidar before you start focusing on this type of stuff, in my opinion. Definitely tier 9 it before you start focusing on this. But this is where you then can go in and claim whichever reputation you want. I have the doubled refinery because I have the prime, as we got it for free in one of the arcs about 6 arcs ago or something. But yeah, even if you don't, you're still going to get half of this amount. So you're still going to get 54,000 points towards whichever faction, obviously, you want. And that's the same across the board. You're going to get 54,000 points towards the faction that you obviously are trying to go towards. And if you want to use that reputation to gain, obviously, go up faster up the tree, again, it's the easiest way to do it. Now coming on to the dual faction grind, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, but as well. But the dual faction grind is as it's sort of stated, it's the second hardest one to do. Or the second easiest, depending on which way you look at it. It's the second hardest or second easiest one to do. Due to the nature of it, you have to obviously hit the faction that you have to focus on 2 factions that don't contradict each other, in my opinion. So, for example, if you were to focus on, say, Romulans, what you need to do is you need to hit, ideally, you need to hit Federation or Klingon. So you need to then discuss, the sort of figure out which one you need to go for predominantly. So if you want to focus predominantly on, obviously, Romulans, then you are best off hitting the Federation, due to the fact that when you hit the Federation ships, i.e. the survey ships that you want to be hitting all the time, you want to be hitting them survey ships, and due to the fact that the drop rate or the points that you gain from hitting them Federation ships, you gain more Romulan reputation. You will also gain Klingon reputation from that. So my advice for you there is, if you, for example, whichever faction you're going for, you should always try and combine it with whichever faction is the secondary for the ships that you're going to be hitting. So if you're going to go Romulan, your second faction is going to be Klingon, and you're going to want to duel them together. Alternatively, you could obviously focus on the others. So you could still focus on Federation. And again, your second faction there is going to be Romulan. In my opinion, that is probably the best way to go. I personally would go Federation and then secondary Romulan. Even if you want to max out your Romulans later down the line, like me personally, go Federation as a secondary, you'll get Romulan, because they're the two factions, in my opinion, are the best factions in the game, certainly for ships, all the way through the tiers up to level 34. We're not going to go beyond that, but up to level 34, they have the best ships in the game, in my opinion. So concentrate on Federation and Romulan. Obviously, if you're going to do that Federation, you're going to need to hit Klingons. As a secondary, you'll get Romulan. And we'll leave it at that. If you're going to triple faction it, the hardest one to do for obvious reasons. It is doable. I personally wouldn't advise doing it because it takes a lot of time to be able to do it. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's probably, obviously you can get all three factions, which is really good. And the good thing about that as well, depending on which one you do, in terms of single is a little bit harder, but dual or triple, the good thing is you start getting the repair speeds. And then once you start getting these built up in the dual or the triple, you will pretty much never run out ever from these different, repair speeds. You will never, ever run out. If you do the single faction, this is a downside to it, is you might run out of repair speeds. Certainly early game. Late game, not so much a bother, but early game, you might run out. But if you're dual factioning or you're triple factioning, you will never, I can pretty much promise you that you will never run out of repair speeds for your ships. Moving on to my recommendation, I personally would recommend doing a dual faction grind. The reason I would recommend doing a dual faction grind is the benefits of doing it is obviously you're focusing on two factions at the same time, getting both of them up at the same time, making your life a little bit easier later down the line. Not only that as well, as I just said, you do get the repair speed ups for your ships, which again is incredibly useful, as well as being able to bank some of the credits for both factions every single day. The only downsides are you have to mine 2 different resources a day, but at the lower levels it is nowhere near that, but it's not that bad. If I'm honest, you're probably only going to need to mine maybe up to 20,000, 25,000 as it states here. It's not horrendously bad all the way up, so it won't take you forever to mine whatever resources you need to mine. And if you are using faction ships later on at like level 30 or even early on, just use whatever ships and you're using the crew layouts that I've stated in other videos, then you should be able to mine them pretty easily in the day and get 2 factions done in one day. But I will caveat that I do recommend doing a dual faction grind as the easiest way forward. However, I do caveat that with, if I go to the faction tab, once you get to about the, I would say about the 5 million mark with one faction. Once you get to that 5 million mark, with 2 factions, once you get to the 5 million with both, obviously one of them, if you're going off the one I've just said, i.e. using the Federation first and then Romulan second, just to get both of them done, then you're going to get to probably 5 million on Romulan, and you'll probably be at maybe around 6 million, maybe even 7 on the Federation at this point. My recommendation at that point, once you hit that 5 million mark, is to stop doing the dual faction grind and focus on one faction at a time, i.e. you're going to want to go for obviously which one ever is the highest. So if you are working on the Federation, for example, then you're going to want to stop Romulan, basically the Romulan grind, and do everything humanly possible to get Federation credits or Federation reputation. The reason I say stop the dual faction is because when we go to the dailies, as you can see in here, so if we go to say Federation, we want to do them, it does give a negative point towards the other faction. So once you get over the 5 million on both factions, and First Officer Winston's that was weird. He's decided to eat something. I'm not entirely sure what it is. Anyway, so once you get, you are going to gain the negative points. However, if you only focus on that one faction at a time, you will gain the most amount of points because you won't be getting any negatives towards the faction, therefore allowing you to level up essentially that faction even faster than before. But once you get to, like I say, the reason I say 5 million is because the losses that you gain from the other faction will be very, very minimal in comparison to doing it prior to this point. So you'll get then your first faction locked in at 10 million. Say Federation will get locked in at 10 million. And then you could then focus on your second. You'll probably only go down to maybe about 4 million, if that, on the other faction. So you will lose points, obviously, but you probably won't go down, to be honest, that much. So then you can focus on then going for example, Romulans. And then all you need to do is then hit Federation. By hitting Federation, you're then going to be working on Romulans predominantly and Klingons as a secondary. And at this point, again, you'll do your dual faction stuff up until the 5 million points again with Romulans. Don't worry about the Klingons. And then once you hit Romulans on the 5 million points, then do it a single grind all the way up to 10 million, all on that one faction. And then when you get to both of them being obviously faction locked in, then focus on the Klingons and do everything you can to get them all the way up to the 10 million point, as they will probably be at the -2 million. At this point, you're going to need to gain obviously 12 million reputation points to do this. The ways to do it, obviously, you can do it through the dailies, you can do it through Vidar, obviously, as well, by getting obviously the Borg stuff in the refinery. And the other way to do it is by literally doing missions. Do as many missions as possible to do with that faction, as by doing the mission, you're going to gain a substantial amount of reputation points, depending on obviously what missions they are. These are obviously quite high tier ones, but even at the low tier, you're going to gain a decent amount of reputation points. And what you want to be doing as well is hitting the highest level survey ships as possible. So for example, if you can hit them, you might want to go to like something like Wolf. I think Wolf's got some survey ships in here. Has it? No, it hasn't. Okay, never mind. We'll just go Grooves Bridge just to show you anyway. If you can hit these types of ships, you want to be finding these types of ships. Hit them as the highest level possible that you can hit, like where you can sustain hitting them for a long period of time, as these get you the most amount of points. So if you were going for Romulan, for example, these get you 1,300 points per ship. So you need to be able to hit these constantly. And what I would do is, as well, it's a bit of a ball ache, and I understand that, but I would definitely dedicate maybe half an hour a day, just going out with one ship, half an hour a day, hitting as many ships as humanly possible with your ship, even if it means you have to repair your ship and then go back out there again. Try and do that. Maybe do one repair a day of a ship or something, and just hit as many survey ships as you can a day. Literally, because if you do it in that way, spend, say, a little bit of time now, in the future, it will make your life a hell of a lot easier, and you will faction lock your ships really, really quickly. This is the way I did it personally, and it worked out perfect for me. I managed to faction lock all three within probably about a year or so. It took me a little bit longer because I didn't really know what I was doing, but now I do. It probably won't take you that long to do either. So definitely recommend this method. If anyone else has any other methods down below, then please do leave your comments and thoughts of what I've just said as well. whether you agree or disagree. Give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe as always. I apologise for the long video, but a lot needed to be said. Other than that, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.